Good afternoon and welcome to the December 9th, 2024 Riverfront Advisory Committee. We'll open for an opportunity for public forum if anyone would like to make public comment. Yeah, Mr. Collins. Yeah, please come up to the mic because we'll pick it up on the broadcast.
I can't stay tonight because I have to go to a fish and game meeting. If anybody has any questions about the weir and or the history of the riverfront, please be in touch. And one suggestion, to access for the town landing, there should be no parking for Main Street for at least 100 feet down by the church. People are pulled over there and stopped constantly during the week, which means there's only one lane going out into Main Street, which makes it dangerous to drive, especially with a boat trailer. Years ago, before they built the condominium buildings along the waterfront, you used to be able to drive there and then go up by where the old town hall was. It's a lot safer. I'm sure it's too late to do anything about that now. But there really should be no parking by the church. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Collins. Would anyone else like to make public comment?
Is this the only opportunity to make a comment?
Ideally, yes. Yeah, just while we get into the agenda, usually like to kind of keep going. So if there's something you'd like to put on the table for consideration, yeah, please do so.
Could you state your name and address, please?
Sure. My name is Steve Pentindo. I live at 125 Main Street, Unit 9. And one of my questions to the board or the group is that I go to the website and I see the proposed plans for the waterfront. And could you explain to me why the property or the riverfront behind 125 Main Street is even part of this, since it's all private property? You know, can you explain how we're going there with this?
Clarity, 125 Main Street.
Is Rivermore.
Okay,
Yes.
just make sure we're talking about the same structure. So I believe the plans you're referring to are the like the charrette design plans or the charrette material that's online, correct? Okay, so in general right now, the riverfront concepts laid out in the charrette were done by a design team that was brought in through a planning grant from the town. Conceptual in nature, basically looking at high-level opportunities along the riverfront, effectively from Bay Road, Heron Point, through the downtown into the southern part of the property. Nothing in there, I believe, really warrants a moniker of like a design or an actual true proposal at this time. Conceptual in nature, though, kind of as discussed a little bit at the last meeting, obviously now is the point where we're inviting and looking for feedback for things like that, because those concepts will become ideas at some point. So one item that came up at the charrette that I believe the town is working on is a review of easements and right of access along the waterfront, because there's quite a few properties, private properties and abutters like that. So there's kind of an ongoing look right now at just basically what is actually on paper, because that forms a great basis for what are the opportunities and where are not opportunities right now.
Right. Well, only because what's becoming, the town just assumes now that that is public property, and it's becoming a dog park, and where they bring their dogs to, while you take your dog for a walk, and it's just misleading.
Understood. So yeah, that's been one of the kind of the first major steps coming out of that charrette. Is just there's an understanding of there's a lot of private property down there. Where are those rights? Where are those rights non-existent?
I'm his other half. My name is Debbie Tintindo. In the 4 years since we've lived there, it has increased immensely. It's like everybody feels like, what do you mean these are your chairs? These are the town's chairs. I said, no, look at the chairs. That's my name underneath there. I live right there. I pay for that. I pay to live here. I pay handsomely to live here. And then you feel like challenged. Well, what do you mean? The town says this is town property. And this is coming more and more. People talk about it in the coffee shop. And it just makes us feel like, wait a minute, our opinions are not being valued at all here. never mind the fact that when we went to the charrette, we stated that that's a bird sanctuary there. If you invite masses of people to come in, the birds are going to leave. It's no longer going to be a sanctuary. And to reiterate, it is private property. I understand what you're saying. You're looking into what right-of-ways, easements, blah, 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 blah. I don't know anything about that. I just know that, to my knowledge, we own right up to the water, then the state owns the water. That's what we've all been told. Okay? All right.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment.
I also just want to make a comment as a resident at Rivermore as well, that definitely since the charrette presentation has been posted on the town website, there has definitely been an increase in the number of pedestrians coming through. We've had members of the public challenge owners when they've started to use our dumpsters, when they've gone to sit in the chairs, and people have gone out and said, this is private property. No, this is town property. It's been shown on the charrette. Where there's going to be a bridge here, and there's going to be, all this development, and it's really beginning to put the residents at Rivermore in a tough situation, because we now feel like we have to police our backyard, and it's just increased in the last 2 months, 3 months, and will probably increase even more once the nicer weather comes, so.
Hi, my name is Claudia Marston Minor. I live at 6 and 8 Creighton Street, just one block up from the town landing and the weir. I have a couple of comments I'd like to share. One is, heard really clearly what Jerry Collins said a couple of weeks ago at this meeting, and I think I'd like to reiterate that the history of the weir, the cultural history before we were ever here, and the ongoing history, and its link to the fisheries that have meant so much to Newmarket and the residents of the entire Piscataqua region. I think it's really important. It's one of the only examples existing in the state anymore, I think, that we can see.
It's the only one.
And I think that's something that we really need to take good care of. Secondly, I'd like to reiterate that the residents along Creighton Street are having a lot of commercial traffic with the septic trucks running down to that pumping station, and that's really had a kind of a negative impact on the waterfront, the use of the waterfront, and certainly our neighborhood and the condition of the road through there. And I would also like to say thirdly that Jerry's comment last time about keeping additional lighting down around the water and around Heron Point and anywhere along the riverfront, I think is really important to keep in mind that it does throw off migrating species, whether they're migrating through the air or underwater. So I think we really ought to pay attention to that as any kind of plans continue to develop. And I see what happens in Rivermore. We've been neighbors of Rivermore before it was turned into residence. And it's lovely how it's been developed and is so nice, and I'm sorry that people don't pay attention to your lovely little gardens and sitting areas.
What was your last name? Sorry.
Marston Minor, Marston Miner. And I live on Creighton Street. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you all. As kind of we've said a couple times, and at the last meeting in particular, it's the only way we learn stuff, and hearing directly from people what your issues are and the items that really are affecting you personally and on a day-to-day. They help. They really do. So much appreciated. Encourage other folks from the public to reach out, to say something, to attend meetings, submit written comment, whatever works for anyone. So thank you. Also, sorry if my voice is really struggling today. Having a hard time casting it further right now. So moving on to acceptance of the minutes from our last meeting, the November 18th meeting. Joe, I reviewed them. I thought they looked good. Does anyone have questions, comments? A motion to approve the minutes as written.
So moved. I did have one thing. I just, Mr. Collins, you have an address in Newmarket, but you're not a resident of Newmarket. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I've had that address longer than anybody else with a post office box at the Newmarket post office.
Okay, that's fine. Does it say,
I believe I put it down at the P.O. Box, but Lee, I think I did. No, I just put the P.O. Box, 195 New Market. Should I, you want
I think it's
to
important
add-
to put in there, it was a discussion point. We did talk about it a little bit, and I think,
to tonight, for tonight's meeting minutes?
what's that?
For tonight's minutes, or put in the...
Yeah, or amend
I would put it in,
Yes.
I would put it in as an amendment, just for clarity.
Okay. All right, I will add P.O. Box 195, parentheses, Mr. Collins lives in Lee. Is that correct? That you live in Lee, New Hampshire?
Oh, yes.
Is that okay?
Yes.
I lived in Newmarket for years. Like, I've had that post office box longer than anybody else in town has had one. So, and my phone number also has been the same for, probably 50 years now.
Right, right. But there is a difference, you understand. I mean, if I went, whether I've lived, I could go back to towns I've lived in before, where they have, we are not, denying you any chance to speak here. It's just that, it's a different work to point out who is a Newmarket resident, who isn't a Newmarket resident in terms of input.
Speaking of which, I understand there was an opening on your board for a non-resident business owner. I would qualify for that.
The business is the weir?
Yes.
Okay, there's a process to go through for that.
Yeah.
You submit an application for that. we
Who
mentioned.
do you submit the application to?
Town office.
Yeah.
Submit to the town manager's office and the town council will review it. So town council approves appointees. I can help you out if you're interested.
All right.
Yeah, I forget the exact stipulations on that opening. There are a couple, but as we talked, you may meet the criteria, so if it's something you have interest in doing, town manager's office would be the first step to submit the application, which ultimately goes to town council.
So did we have a second on that?
I'll second as amended.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
So, new business, Liz, would turn it over to you for, well, I guess it's technically old business, but master plan chapter development, we kind of scratched the surface last time, so keep the
Okay.
process going.
Do I need to move this up at all, or is it
Uh,
supposed to be facing down?
I-
Okay.
Yeah, ideally, because I think that's the best audio feed
That's
for
fine.
the recordings.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me back again, everyone. I'm Liz Durfee. I'm a planning consultant, and I am working subcontracted by Stratford Regional Planning Commission to work on the downtown Riverfront Master Plan chapter. And we did a sort of quick run-through of some of the public input and an overview of the themes for all of the master plan chapters, including the downtown Riverfront chapter at the last meeting that I attended last month. And tonight I was hoping that we could talk a little bit more about some of the content and topics that I've identified as sort of fitting within the buckets of each of the 5 different themes. Then if we have a little bit more time and there's interest, we can talk a little bit about big picture sort of vision for the waterfront, and then close out with sort of schedule and next steps. So you can let me know if you like have a cap on time, and otherwise I'll maybe try to do like half an hour or so, if that's all right.
You are basically the agenda tonight.
Well, so we'll keep going as long as you're up for it then. So everyone has the handout, I believe, and there are extra copies if anyone needs one over there, and I have several right here too. So just to reiterate for folks who may not have been at the last meeting, 5 themes have been identified for the full master plan, and within each chapter we'll be kind of writing the narrative of the chapter within the lens of those 5 different themes. They're on the screen now. They are vibrancy, connectivity, accessibility, affordability, and resilience. And for every chapter, this theme is going to mean something slightly different. So I thought we could start with vibrancy, which is the first theme. Talk a little bit about some of the key topics to explore in this section of the chapter. You can let me know if you have strong feelings about maybe including the topic in another section, or if you see something missing, want to expand on any of these topics here. I'm not going to read through them. I'll let you read through them for a second.
As a brief aside part, do you think we should give like a 2-sentence intro to the master plan process? I find it hard to believe this is new information to people at this point, but if this is also the first place that they're encountering it.
Yeah, so this master plan, as Liz said, it's broken up into 5 different fees for each chapter. So master plan basically is a document that works towards building set of goals for the next 10 years and how your town wants to develop. It's administered by the planning board. And in this case, the planning board has decided to set up a subcommittee, and below that some teams to help develop the chapters, so that bring in experts in different areas. So some of the chapters, instead of the riverfront, is going to be future land use, utilities, community facilities, arts and culture, and storage resources. So basically, town is developing a document to help, plan for these different areas of the town. So in this case, the Riverfront Advisory Committee is in charge of this downtown waterfront chapter. And they're basically the expert team working on this that will make recommendations to this master plan subcommittee, and then ultimately to the planning board. And the planning board will have the final say in what the chapter composition will be. So right now what we're doing for each of these chapters is going through these themes and making sure that we have all the topics that we want to talk about within these themes. And there's one more chapter that it's called the implementation chapter. So from all the chapters with this big matrix that has the goals and who's responsible for goals and timeline for action when those goals should be achieved. So that's what we're doing right now, is the process of developing those. Basically understanding, through these 5 themes, these 5 lenses, what is the riverfront, downtown riverfront, how we want to evolve as a community in this specific space in the future. And then once we, agree upon those, and then, help us determine what goals we need to aspire to achieve that vision. So right now we're just at the beginning stages of this chapter development to making sure that we have all the content for each theme to move forward with as we develop the chapter. So that's kind of like the short version of it. Is there any questions?
If you don't own the riverfront, how can you have on the plans for it?
Oh yeah, so we don't own it, but it doesn't mean we can't work with partners. So this will be a lot of community discussions, and if some people, if we don't own it, and they don't want to participate in any plans, then it doesn't go anywhere. So what this is kind of coming together as a community to try to aspire for a common vision. What do we want to become? How can public and private entities come together to achieve something, a common vision? And it's like, kind of circle back to the design charrette. That was a conceptual in nature. You know, in order for that to happen, so many things would have to happen with different people, private property owners, the state agencies, the town as well. So that was just kind of like, this is what's possible, potentially. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. So this is something that we heard from the community during the charrette process that we may want to look into or may not. And so that's what
Your first name is?
I need part.
That's what I thought. I think you're having a lot of faith in people that what you're saying to them and what you're leading them to potentially be able to have. I heard one gentleman stand up and say something to the effect of, well, why can't you just share it? Why can't we just share it? Do you share in the cost that I have? Do I jump into your backyard and use your grill? And, this is what I'm saying. There's a level of, respect our private property, and it's already being challenged with just the conceptualized thing that you put out there.
So I don't want to go into that a little further because I want to respect the
Sure,
time
go
of the
ahead.
board.
Yep, sorry.
So I can talk to you offline about that. But again, what we're trying to do is get everyone to the table as much as possible to figure out how we want to move forward in the future. And I do agree with you in private property rights, and happy to have that discussion a little later. But so again, what we're trying to do is trying to find a common vision for the riverfront. And there's a lot of different stakeholders with different issues and aspirations. We're trying to find that common vision. This is the place that we're doing it.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, so take a couple minutes to read through sort of the topics that are outlined under vibrancy. And these came from sort of a number of sources, the charrette, some of the other studies from Newmarket. There's a couple regional resources that I've been looking at, but there was the Living Shoreline design project that was very specific to the downtown Shanda Park area, Moonlight Brook study a few years ago, and things like that. And that's just some other ideas of topics to include.
So Liz, would you recommend choosing, so certainly some of these are repetitive. I mean, what's listed here can be condensed. For instance, there's, dock space for visitors, and then, activities offered or a variety of ways that people can use. I feel like we can consolidate some of these items that are on the list. Do you recommend we choose 3 that are most important, or?
I wouldn't worry too much about consolidating things right now.
Okay.
I would say this is more of a brainstorm phase to
Okay.
kind of incorporate the public input and some of the ideas and concepts that came out of past studies. So, for example, dock space for day visitors was a specific topic that came up.
Okay,
We also have a lot of input on how people use the waterfront. So I'll make a reference to the specific survey data. It won't be included in the narrative, but I think there'll be a hyperlink to the appendix, and we'll have the actual survey data so that
Great.
people can go see it.
okay.
So we don't have to narrow the scope too much or don't worry about the flow at this point. Just the concepts. Make sure we have all the topics that you think should be addressed under this kind of broad heading of vibrancy. And I recognize that it's kind of difficult to tease out which topics you want to talk about in which section, and things may change a little as the narrative gets developed. For this chapter in particular, accessibility and connectivity are very closely tied. So if you want to focus on vibrancy first, if anything jumps out at you as missing, a a topic you'd like to make sure we really expand on in this section, then let me know now, and I'll make some notes on that.
And maybe for some clarification for folks who are here tonight and may not have heard this earlier, we're looking at from the water line all the way up through Main Street and all the businesses that are on the Main Street. Is that what we're considering as the shoreline?
So, yeah, so I passed out this map, and I can pass a copy around to folks. We had a short call the other day to talk about the boundary for this chapter, so that when we're doing mapping and kind of quantifying different types of land use, we have something to look at. Right now, what we've included is an area just north of the 108 crossing, down Main Street, in the riverside of Main Street, so the east side, basically including that area. We're not going to really dive into individual kind of commercial uses in the mills in this chapter. That's sort of out of the scope of our chapter, but we talked a little bit about the mill space in the charrette, and that being kind of one area that gives people a little bit of access to sort of that side of the mills. So we may touch on that a little bit, but then the boundary extends down to the kind of larger blue areas, which are town-owned properties where public works are, and then across to kind of in between the upper and lower narrows of the lamprey there to the Heron Point Sanctuary parcel. And then we included the Lamprey River mobile home park there because they're significant stakeholders in sort of that conversation about accessing Heron Point. And then back up Bay Road. That boundary can be modified if folks want to, propose it sort of a different idea about what should or shouldn't be encompassed. But just to maybe touch back on a comment earlier about public versus private property, often the master plan chapters, they'll encompass the full land and water area town-wide. And the idea is to kind of take a high-level look at things like zoning, for example, that the town has some ability to control for public and private property when you're thinking about zoning changes in the future. When we talk about natural resources, we're looking at resources on public property as well as, private property that may be conserved, for example. So it's not necessarily a plan for town-owned properties versus non-town-owned properties. It's looking more at concepts. And I think talking about private property within the context of this chapter is going to be very important because, regardless of what happens in the future of where public access is, there definitely needs to be some changes with respect to identifying where the public is welcome and where the public is not welcome. And so those conversations, I think, are within the scope of this chapter. So that's why it includes many more parcels than just the town-owned parcels within this boundary.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think that's something that I've personally received quite an education on over the last year and a half, is actually just rights of access, public versus private, where easements where may there not be stuff. And I know, that's after a year and a half of talking about it. I kind of understand it. I don't expect Joe Public to understand it. So I think trying to get that first step of what are these things that actually exist today settled is important. I'm glad that the town's moving forward with that.
Any thoughts on vibrancy?
I think you've captured the essence.
All right, great.
Everyone in the town likes the riverfront. They all use it.
Yeah.
It's a vibrant area.
Yeah, and
And I'm sorry, I just also think it's important that we've got the history, because
Yeah.
without the history, we would not be Newmarket. So the historical context is going to be very important.
I agree, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good to see that on there, because I think that's very important
Yeah.
too. I
Yeah.
think kind of maintaining its natural function and capturing the history is a huge part of anything that gets done.
Or is there a historic resources chapter for this
Yes, the
update?
arts,
too?
arts and culture.
Okay, okay. I'll check in with them too about sort of what they're including.
Just under vibrancy, I don't know, you have ice cream shops, just other retail. It kind of doesn't play up the importance of the retail space in downtown. Anybody feel like maybe we get to expand on that, business-wise?
I mean, maybe we could, maybe it would just be a matter of putting retail space and then i.e. ice cream shop, restaurants, gift shops.
I guess what I'm getting at is that we don't seem to be making it bigger than I think it should be.
Yeah, and part of why I asked what was included was because it only listed the ice cream shop, and the ice cream shop used to be down there on the backside of the
Ice
mill
cream shop
buildings.
says other
Yeah,
retail,
right.
but I don't know, to me, that's a very important piece of all the restaurants down there. The
Yes,
downtown is an
right,
important piece
right.
of everything that we're doing here, and I don't know whether
Just
we
retail.
highlight that as much as maybe we should.
Or just take out the
Retail
ice cream
and
to
business
retail and
opportunities.
business, yeah.
Just keep it more cool.
I thought that, I hear your point, and I will definitely make a note of that. And there were a lot of comments in the survey about, interest in, well, one, how people use the riverfront. A lot of people said restaurant. A lot of people said ice cream shop, like they go and get an ice cream and walk along the riverfront, probably across private property.
That's because they were lacing it with some,
Well,
adult material.
before that. But I think there were a lot of other comments about, interest in more restaurant space on the waterfront as well. And I think the proximity of the waterfront to the downtown businesses is definitely an important factor for those businesses in terms of sort of attracting foot traffic and things like that. So make sure that it's not, the sole focus is not going to be the ice cream store. But it was interesting how many people in the survey did say, I get an ice cream and I go walk along the riverfront. It is like it's a way that people are interacting with the riverfront. If there had been a coffee shop right there on the backside, instead of ice cream, they probably would have said, I get a coffee and go walk down on the riverfront. But I did want to make a note about that. Any other thoughts on vibrancy?
Yeah, I kind of wonder, is there a way, I mean, in places I've traveled before, sometimes they kind of keep, even the parks they do that. They have a place where the public maintains ownership, because a lot of times the places for the public to go and enjoy the waterfront that are commercial in nature, that serve food or something like that. They many times kind of, those places, you see it along Portsmouth, or, Warren's or something like that. It tends to convert to housing because the values are so high, and it kind of cuts down on some of the access and vibrancy. So is there a way to encourage the availability? You had the mill space in there, and that ice cream shop kind of struggled, but if we're successful in creating a more of a well-delineated area where people can go and enjoy it and everybody feels comfortable that people are where they're supposed to be, I think it would be important for businesses to thrive in those areas, because it's not just to go there and sit, it's to go there and buy things, consume coffee or ice cream or a sandwich, and go use the public areas. That's part of the whole vibrancy gestalt.
Yeah, like there's space to walk near where the ice cream shop was. There's not a lot of public seating, for example. So
Right.
it's, if there was more public seating in an area closer to a business, that probably would be beneficial to the businesses.
Yeah. When we moved here, my kids just loved Joyce's Kitchen. They just, that was such a, it was a, you think about it in terms of in another age where people are more, where the town's more activists say, could something have been done to make it, weigh the scales so that that kind of a public institution would be sort of favored as a use, and, provided with some economic help or something like that to
Yeah.
keep it in the public realm.
I also think too, when you go to the next component on connectivity, I mean, one of the things we also noted is that wayfinding is a big thing that we need to expand upon too. So, if is there the possibility that restaurants can then, have a map as to, grab your ice cream and go to the Shanta Park, or go, up towards the library and go to these other places where they can go in and walk and sit in an area to enjoy it. So,
That's a great idea.
Segue into connectivity as a general
Yeah.
thought, but,
Okay.
yeah, because I think that's, if you talk about more easily actionable items, connectivity of showing people where they can go, how to get there, how places connect, that's a pretty easy thing to be done or to be explored upon. But I do like your bullet about, kind of prioritize Shanda Park and radiate out from there. I think that's a good way of putting it. If you talk about a central area that's, without a doubt available to the public, that's the spot, and then what opportunities exist from that location.
Yeah, I think that was a comment from this board, this committee at the last meeting, and I thought that was a great point.
Congratulations, whoever brought it up.
Yeah.
This is a good way of putting it.
So there's a few kind of concepts, I think, to explore in the connectivity chapter. One is the wayfinding piece, which I think is really important for, even if nothing changes, just letting people know where can you go, where should you not be if you don't, if you're not a resident of some of the waterfront properties. Where is there a right of way for people to pass or for people to access the waterfront? How does the downtown waterfront kind of connect to Main Street itself? How can that be sort of improved? How can you make the river maybe a little bit more visible from Main Street through signage or public art, for example? Maybe through form-based code, which I know the town's working on as well. And then sort of connectivity along the riverfront, and to Heron Point, maybe to the down as far as the Fish and Game boat landing area. Like, what are the opportunities to connect, start to connect properties and access?
So where it says radiate out from there, do we need to maybe expand that to be a little bit more specifically say where we're thinking about radiating out south of Shanda Park? Just, radiate out from there is just very broad.
So far, the areas that were discussed in the charrette and that are kind of encompassed in this map are the Classics Road that's at the top of the Colonial Drive, and that trail network, looking at, is that an area that people may want to use, develop that trail network. And then down to the wastewater treatment plant properties, obviously not getting close to those properties, but that general vicinity of the waterfront areas down there.
So my thought, it's highly unlikely we're going to have a bridge to Heron Point, okay? Certainly signage to let people walk there. It's certainly within walking distance there, and improve the signage, do it that way. But I think we offer a unique opportunity to expand directly walking from Shanda Park directly into that area behind the water treatment plant. We have all that land there. I don't know how many acres, I forget, but that would really be well developed. And that's what I was saying, where we say we radiate out from Shanda Park, maybe be a little bit more specific as to what we might do?
Still think in the context of a master plan, you'd want to leave it open. Because I mean, it might not necessarily be directly on the river, but I still think linking the Main Street part of downtown to the riverfront is advantageous. So, I mean, that would be west and north. So I don't know if we want to get too specific about it. You know, Sharon points east. So I think it's just, you know, do we see Shanda Park as like a nexus point? Like that's the spoke of your wheel, and everything else comes out from there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What I was thinking of doing was taking some of the input that the town has received so far through the surveys and charrette and work sessions, and kind of doing a little bit of a mock-up on a map of sort of potential areas that could be connected, existing and potential, and then fleshing those ideas out with you. And then if you want to move forward thinking about, you know, investing more time and energy into one specific route, then that's something that could be included as a recommendation to, you know, prioritize looking at like a waterfront connection from Shanda Park to the wastewater treatment plant, like near the pump station. That kind of explore that if that's an area that the committee is more interested in. Because we won't get into too much detail about. I'd like to put all the options on the table in this chapter so that you can kind of pick and choose and revisit what some of the potential ideas that the community members have put forward in terms of ways to improve connectivity, and then as you know, have sort of a menu for you to choose from and put your top interests in as action items in the plan itself. If that makes sense.
Will there be a action items section?
There will. So every chapter has we'll have goals, either one or more goals for each of the 5 themes, and then under each of the goals there are the action items or the recommendations. So you can have you know, one or more for each goal under each theme.
I wanted to just clarify one thing because I'm not sure, you know, I was on the committee, we've been meeting as a committee. Has it been 3 years? It was right after the pandemic.
Yeah.
So there, in the early times, you know, there were a lot of areas that the public had been walking for a long time. And it was unclear for a long time. It's relatively, out of that 3 years, been relatively recent where people have really said, we need to exactly understand it. And, you know, staff has been doing work on that to understand that better. But it was also always said, you know, sometimes it's a matter of how it's been used over a period of time, you know, what has been commonly utilized as an area to walk. I think the area in front of Rivermore, there's a sign that says walking path that goes along there. So I'm not saying I am disagreeing with anybody that is privately owned land. That is not what I'm saying at all. All I'm saying is when I first understood that they were going to look at it to understand, is there any, you know, right established by long-term use? Has it been put to bed that there's no public right to walk along that area, or is that something that's still under investigation by the legal member of the town? I'm just asking if it's a known or if it's still an area of exploration.
At the last meeting, I think Bart said it was still under investigation.
Yeah, we're just putting all the,
So
I just want to know that until we know that there's no avenue forward on there, I think a lot of the public is used to walking in that area. And if it's closed to anybody walking through there, then there will be a different plan. But until we know that, we don't say that's off the table, that's done. That's the way I feel about it.
Well, I think similar to some of the other kind of access and connectivity items that we're talking about, for example, one of the concepts that came up was either purchasing an easement or land, on Bay Road to better access Heron Point.
Yes.
Obviously, there's a lot that goes into those discussions, and you need willing landowners to do that piece. But it's something that could be included as a potential possibility if they're interested in willing landowners. And the community itself is interested in,
Right.
coughing up the money for that too.
Yeah, I agree. You can't make, a community is a big public enterprise, and you can't make a decision unless you can talk about it. And then you
Right.
can make decisions about how much resource, what can be done, is this feasible? What are our legal rights? Do we have any legal rights as a town to a certain area? Any of those things, you just need more information, and then you can start figuring out, what's the will of the community, what's possible, yada, yada.
Yeah, and also, I think the goals are, or that mindset is correct, because things change over time. You don't know what may be true today may not be otherwise. I mean, we had public comment about, the Creighton Street pump station, while the town's been in the process of moving septic out of that. So if you don't run trucks down there and you don't need as much space to turn around, does it present other opportunities? I don't know. It's a question for the town as a whole and the Environmental Services Department. But what was true 30 years ago isn't true today. So I think leaving the concepts broad of this is an opportunity if and when the pieces fall into place, that seems appropriate.
Other thoughts on connectivity? All right, on to accessibility. I think connectivity and accessibility for this chapter really go hand in hand, but I think the focus for the accessibility piece is to make sure that there's ADA accessible space for community members. There's amenities at places like Shanda Park for people of all ages. There's parking or signage that directs people to parking, things like that. Heron Point, I think, could fall within this sort of the discussion on how to access Heron Point, what the long-term plan is for allowing community members to more easily access Heron Point than the parking at the Bay Road lot or walking from downtown. Those types of topics, I think, a little bit different than connectivity and fit well under the accessibility heading.
Do we need to include parking as a general topic for this section?
I think we do, yeah. If I didn't throw it in here, I don't think I put it in, unless I put it in the connectivity section. I'll highlight parking here.
That better suited as more of like a tie-in to this. I mean, I feel like parking may exist other places within the master plan, like transportation or something, so we don't need to get like exhaustive with it.
I was thinking more along the lines of, parking for the downtown businesses. We do cover that area here, the downtown, right?
Got it.
I think parking for this chapter will focus on ensuring that there's space for people that want to access the waterfront specifically, can park, in close proximity to. There's a lot of places that you can park, and it may just mean better signage, but there's quite a bit of parking in different areas that are not far from the riverfront, depending on where you're trying to access.
So are we adding any, or doing anything here or not?
I made a note on parking. I'm not going to focus on parking from a sort of commercial perspective on whether there's sufficient parking for businesses and kind of get into the parking study aspect of it. But I think making sure that people know where they can park and access the riverfront. The Shanda Park parking area kind of falls within the scope of this piece, and some of the proposed, improvements or stormwater management at that parking area could fall within the scope of this piece, this section as well. Their thoughts on that? All right.
Do you separate out I mean, it's a fairly luxurious assignment of trailering, boat trailer parking in that area, and I don't know what, I think there will be changes happening there, but that's part of that whole accessibility as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think boat, what I'll do is do an inventory of parking at that parking lot and the boat parking. I think if the town wants to evaluate whether there's too much or too little trailer parking, then that could be a next step. Right, the town doesn't have any data on usage for trailers.
That counts, but just anecdotal.
Pretty busy during that kind of season.
There is a lot of alternative parking areas, but not a lot of alternative boat parking areas. But I've always wondered if, it would be close enough for the people that are there to, for example, to have it over, if there was extra space in the area around the pumping station that's now paved but will be less used. That it would be interesting if there would be a design for that. But lots of moving parts, I get that.
Or if a lot of it is, I should say, during the duck hunting season, maybe to emphasize that there's more space down by the sewage treatment plant and the water treatment plant.
Yeah, except
With that's state, isn't it?
yeah, and the boat landing there, that would be a long walk to go up, try to drop your boat off and walk back and forth there. But the pump station isn't so far.
Yeah.
For some, and you at places like Winnipesaukee, you see that where parking lot, I think, down there in Alton, where it probably was used, I don't know for a fact, but it seems likely that there's a boat landing there that a lot of that parking has been converted to other uses, and but there's a parking area not too far away. You can easily walk it for people, and so. I think it takes up a fair amount of room, just, speaking from personal experience, you need some room to be able to turn around and put your boat in there. And then, a lot of the people that do that don't park there, so.
Do we need a bullet under accessibility for improvements to the current boat launch area?
Yeah, that topic was explored quite a bit, I think, in the Living Shoreline study as well. And
Dock space is kind of on the next one on affordability, but I do.
I think on the next one, but I think that fits well within this one. Boat ramp. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of kind of teasing out what conversations to have in which sections, because I don't want to break up the topics too much when talking about, Shanda Park, for example. I don't want to have bits and pieces too spread out over these 5 different narratives, but I think the boat ramp piece can be woven into the accessibility section pretty easily. I did put dock space under the affordability piece. I thought that might fit well under there because there is quite a bit of infrastructure along the waterfront that is not publicly, that's not free for the public to use. There's not a lot of town space for folks, day visitors or residents who, might be looking for an affordable place to keep their watercraft or use a space for a short period of time. So under affordability, talking about equitable access, that sort of fits in with, parking and, making sure there's space for people who want to bring a boat to park and access this, the boat ramp or the seasonal dock. Affordable recreation opportunities and boat rentals, event space, either free events put on by the community or affordable space for rent, whether that's renting out Shannon Park or something else like that. Any other affordability topics that you can think of for this?
No, of the 5 themes, it's probably the one that doesn't as readily fit into this chapter as others. This is a little tickler. People are unaware. You can rent Shanda Park for events. You have to send an application to the Conservation Commission for that use, but it is able to be rented for public consumption.
And then resiliency is the 5th theme for the chapter, and I kind of played around with what to include in resiliency because I do think it's important to sort of talk about natural resources, as a key aspect of the waterfront. There is going to be a water resources and land conservation water resources chapter itself, but part of the reason why the riverfront is vibrant is because of the natural resources. So making sure that there are sort of controls and policies in place to minimize pet waste. We talked about feeding the ducks and the birds. We've talked a lot about Moonlight Brook and water quality issues there. There's a number of proposed prioritized projects that relate to Moonlight Brook. Talked a little bit about stormwater management at the parking area. And then there's the discussion of sea level rise, which I think is really important to consider for any type of redesign or re-envisioning of the waterfront. Is where are the, what areas do we know are so vulnerable that aren't worth investing infrastructure that can't withstand flooding, and making sure that is sort of front and center in this piece of the chapter. And then other things like that we talked about, the impacts on fish and wildlife, like lighting, and we talked about potential impacts of getting a lot of people over into Heron Point Sanctuary and how that's not necessarily the key objective for that natural area, but making sure that people are mindful of the space over there and the wildlife. And then I would want to tie in just a few things for thinking about future planning anywhere, is thinking about how you can make an area more resilient when you're looking at materials that you're using. We're going to have hotter temperatures, so we want to think about what materials are more resilient to hotter temperatures, thinking about opportunities to increase shading and tree cover in areas if they are going to be re-envisioned or redeveloped at all in the future. Any other thoughts on resiliency related pieces?
I think that's good. I guess I would mention it at this point because it's an area I thought early on that maybe it would be important to try to raise as much of Shanda Park as possible because it is not far away from flooding more regularly than it already floods. And, given the time frame of how long it takes to go from master plan and have something happen, it almost certainly will be flooding more often in the future. But it gets into, how much are you going to try to protect, it flooded a wide area down there, including up to buildings pretty close, I think, in that January flood. So I'm not sure, if you started building areas around it. So I do like the idea of if they do the area over Moonlight Brook that you put in your email, which I thought was great, that could be an area of heightened resiliency that would allow you to put some infrastructure if you're going to use it for musical events and stuff. You could have electricity and areas, and then it'd be an area of real thought in terms of what else you think you can harden and what else you think you can't, around that area as when you figure for 2050 sea level rise, 2100 sea level rise. Those are different numbers, but the range on those and the certainty of them seems to be tightening over time. So people are, I think that it's an opportunity for planning.
Thanks.
So what can we best do to kind of continue to aid you on your efforts, I guess?
So, I have a couple questions for you, actually. I have my notes here. So, I'm hoping to have a fairly complete draft of the narrative ready for your review by the February meeting. But I am willing to come to the January meeting as well if you would like to dig a little bit deeper into any of the topics or talk about maybe connectivity a little bit more, what some of your priority areas are, or any specific topics that you want to focus a little bit on. We could also talk a little bit more about broad sort of vision for the area. So the chapter will have a 2 to 3 paragraph vision statement. So if you're interested in having that discussion at your January meeting, happy to come back and do that. And then for the February meeting, I'll plan on sending like a fairly complete draft in advance of the meeting, and we can kind of go through it and take comments on it at that point, if that works for you.
Is that the 13th?
Does anyone know what day Martin Luther King Day is?
It's the following week,
That's
so
the
the
20th.
13th looks good.
No, we have a bad habit of counting federal
One
holidays.
Monday holiday we don't fall on.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, so I mean, it would probably be January 13th. Knowing you live close by, we're not asking you to drive like an hour and stay out all night. Yeah, if you're willing to do that, I think that'd be helpful, especially as you get another month into it. If there's other things you want to input or questions or whatever, it seems like another logical check-in before the draft.
Yeah, that would be great. And then in the meantime, I have a list of some questions, data that I'm going to send out to various staff members, and have a couple meetings to set up with other stakeholders. We talked about the meeting with the Lamprey River Mobile Home Park folks, maybe doing like an informational history interview with Jerry about the Weir to capture all of his expertise in history, and I'll try to get all that sort of wrapped up. I don't know if I'll have that all done before the January meeting just because of the holidays, but make some progress on that before then. Well, I appreciate your comments over email, Sam. Also, I printed those in case folks want to talk about that at all now, but you can also feel free to anyone can send comments too. If you think of something after the meeting that you want to make sure we talk about at the advisory committee meetings.
Yeah,
More than happy to.
I don't know if we necessarily have to get into it now. I mean, again, in an ideal world, I was intending to send that like 2 weeks prior so that there would have been a little more time and we could have started talking to it. But again, like I think just reiterating, it was a little bit more just my personal thought and perspective. But like, I would like to use that as a discussion maybe for January of like, well, what does everyone else think? Because is there some agreement on the broad concept of what the next step is, even if the details are obviously.
Yeah, I felt like you consolidated and kind of captured a lot of trend heading towards that, but it's nice to say, yes, that is the crux of what's going to happen in the most immediate future out of this process. And I thought that was really well stated.
If that's the general feel, I guess, of the committee, not just my personal preference, then I would like that concept or intent to find its way into the chapter development. That this is larger than the individual thing. It's a more global concept of, is there a way to do a holistic improvement that finds a way to tie in other town departments that have interests out there, but is also, respecting the fact that there's already stuff there. It's a beautiful natural environment. It needs to stay that way. There's already town infrastructure there that has to be maintained. And, we want to be cognizant of folks that call that area their home. I mean, you can't escape it if that's your backyard.
Yeah.
So I think it's a bigger plan, or starting to move the master plan into a statement of intent that this is a larger undertaking.
Is there any, I can't remember from the charrette, did anybody create any kind of visual as a first stab at what that platform over Moonlight Brook, as I understand it to be?
Yeah, there's a couple graphics. We don't have the final report yet that will have like professional scanned in graphics, but if you look in the PowerPoint, and I could bring a picture next time, there's one nice plan view, and then there's kind of a quick sort of 3D rendering. But I am planning to pull kind of bits and pieces from that document into the chapter and then reference other areas. And then we can kind of fine tune things a little bit more as we go along too.
Yeah, because I think that would be a nice visual to sort of encapsulate what's the most immediate, part of that. It's the plan radiates out from there and encompasses a lot more, but when, at the time I got on this committee, it was somebody, that rendering of a pedestrian bridge that a lot of people focused on, and that, if it isn't clear that it's never going to happen, it's not going to happen among anything near term. I think that's clear. So this would be a more of something that is something that people can seize on and look at and understand, because it encapsulates a lot. There's a lot going on around that whole space.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Much appreciated. So the rest of the agenda is relatively brief. More just a reminder, the annual town report, they're asking for a draft of the write-up we submit for the committee by, I think, like January 15th. I've done the draft the last couple of years. I'm happy to do so again. I think we have time I should have time to draft that and send that, and I think we can discuss it on the 13th before it's due.
Okay.
So I think if we have time at our next meeting to discuss if there's anything in there anyone wants to change.
Yeah.
So if everyone's okay with that, I'll take on the
Thank you.
draft writing process and we can talk about it next meeting.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Thank you.
A couple reminders for old business. I do intend to go to the Conservation Commission meeting in January, which is January 9th, which would be before our next meeting. I've other people, I think, had expressed some interest. Do we
What
want to
time
just?
is it?
It's usually 7 o'clock downstairs in this building. Do we want to just notice it as like a joint meeting and everyone could go?
Yeah, I think that'd be
I
good.
was planning on going, so.
Yeah, why-
Sounds like
Why
everybody's
don't we
going.
just
Yeah.
do that?
Yeah.
Joint meetings are good.
All right, I'll let Ellen know too.
I don't think I can go, but
And then I always have the reminder from Master Plan Committee update on it, but we actually haven't met between our last meeting and today. Is there a meeting Wednesday? No.
No, we do
Okay.
January.
Cool. So we kind of briefly touched on it, but per interval and second Monday, January 13th of 25 would be the next meeting, if that sounds good to everyone else.
Shall we also set the February meeting as well while we're
Yeah, so I mean, I think February
10th?
10th would be the right day for that, because that
Okay.
seems 17th is President's Day.
February 10th.
February 10th pops
Yeah.
up automatically on it. But
Yeah, so it looks like we can keep it for a change here.
Okay.
2 in a row, woo.
Yeah.
Record. Okay. Yeah, so it would be January 13th and February 10th, which seem like the right intervals and also avoid the holidays. So. That's all I had. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
I'll second and,
Oh, yeah, I guess. Request. Aye.
yeah,
All right, thank you, everyone.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.